Time. Is it real? Or different time zones, time can feel like it's ahead of its time.
Bring a British clock to Nigeria. Is it going to still act British or is it going to act Nigeria?
You have to set it. No. It will.
Hi guys! And welcome to my channel, and today I'm joined with my
Family!
And today we're going to be checking this content out. If you're new here, please consider liking, subscribing, and the little more about me coffee will be down. Check that out and support us, and let's get right into this one.
Oh, hello, don't mind me, just using the calculator on my phone, which I keep in my pocket just to stick it to my year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury. And speaking of maths, remember a few videos ago when I said this? A question that I get all the time is, why do British people say maths instead of math? Well, when it comes to Britain and America, this is by no means the only difference that involves numbers. In fact, since I moved to the United States, my daily life has become filled with numeric anomalies with which my brain may never come to terms. Now, before I get into that, I do want to point out that this video will not be examining our two countries' different measuring systems, because I also did that in a previous video. And while we're on the subject of numbers, if you want to propel this channel to 1 million subscribers, and you haven't yet become one yourself, do that now! In the meantime, here are 10 ways that British and American people use numbers very differently. Now, before I hit record on today's video, I did a little bit of a tally as to how many places I've lived in either country. During the 26 years that I lived in Britain, I lived at precisely 5 addresses, compared to 9 during the 16 years that I've lived in America. And during that time, one major pattern has stood out to me. American addresses definitely have longer house numbers, but British addresses have longer postcodes. So it all evens out. In fact, let me give you some examples of what I mean. From memory, every single address that I had in Britain comprised of 2 digits. And pound for pound, the experience of most British people is that their house address won't ever exceed 3 digits. There are occasional exceptions to that, but in America, those exceptions seem to, in fact, be the rule. Because at virtually all of the places...
It's the same thing.
It's not the same. I think we are using the American and the British standard
together.
because the plot we went yesterday was 103 and our address 24. Do you get?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's a mix of
but
it.
so far, I've not seen 3 digits. I've always been seeing
I feel like that 3 digits depend on the number of houses within the estate.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Wow. It's a mixture that collabo with.
Yeah.
places that I've lived in the US, the house or the apartment number has been in the thousands. And
Oh.
also, at some of these addresses, the American street name itself might contain a number, like 321st Avenue. They don't usually go that high. But 2nd Street. In Britain, a street that's also a number is very uncommon to the extent that I'm not sure they even exist. However, as I said, Britain has America beat when it comes to the size of our postcodes. And if for whatever reason you're confused by the term postcode, it is simply what Americans know as a zip code. You see, in Britain, a postcode can range from 6 to 8 characters, where in the US it's just 5. However, notice there that I said characters and not...
Our zip code is how many digits? 5.
It's 6. 9000185.
It's 6. How is it 6?
Wait.
9
Yeah.
6.
Yeah.
6.
How is it 6?
Numbers? Well, since this video is all about numbers, there is something to keep in mind here. British postcodes are a combination of letters and numbers, meaning that American zip codes probably have more numbers, but that's whatever.
Banks,
The first letters in a UK postcode denote the postal region. So, for example, where I grew up in Grimsby, that was part of the Doncaster postal code for some reason. So the first 2 letters are DN. And then you have a series of numbers and letters that denote a more precise location. And that's it. In America, it's just numbers, so that's easy. And basically, the first couple of digits are arranged by state. So here in the state of Illinois, those first 2 digits range from 60 to 62. Of course, when it comes to the size of your house number, there's one group of people who don't give a flying herd of badgers, and that's data brokers. Instead, they're so preoccupied with making bank from selling your address to people search sites. After buying my first American house, I started showing up on hundreds of them. Hello. One other series of digits over which Britain has America beat is phone numbers, actually. Typically speaking, if we're not calling from overseas, in which we would need to use a country code, then a UK phone number usually consists of 11 digits. US phone numbers, meanwhile, consist of 10, basically 2 zip codes put together. The major difference here comes in the area code. For the first 20 years of my life, growing up in Grimsby, my area code was 01472, 5 digits. But it's worth keeping in mind that that only applies to landlines landline phones. In the last 25 years, of course, we've seen the rise of the mobile phone and/or calculator. In Britain, unlike with landline phones, these are not assigned an area code. In fact, I think most, if not all, mobile phones in the UK.
Do you know
The
what
area
area
code,
code?
yeah, like plus. No, Nigeria is plus 32
Uh,
234.
234, yeah.
So they have
oh,
five.
071. Okay, I've heard that
2 3.
before. Yeah,
Wow.
071. Okay, ours is 234. Wow.
Begin with the digits 07. Incidentally, those are two digits that are going to be very important later on in this video, so keep watching. In America, I was surprised to find that this was quite different, because your mobile, or cell phone as it's usually known in the US, will usually carry the same area code as your landline phone, if you still have a landline phone. So for example, the first place that I lived was Anderson, Indiana, and that city is in a region of Indiana that carries the area code 765. So all of the landlines there begin 765. And if you purchase your cell phone there, most likely that too will have the same area code. And most states, like Indiana and my
Wow.
current state of
So each state have their own
In the US.
Area code.
I
area
think they are too
code.
populated to be using one.
Area code.
area code.
Wow, that's fascinating because my country, everybody, everywhere you go, the same area code.
You can't compare the number of people in US to
Yeah,
Nigeria.
I think a state in it can be like Nigeria itself.
Illinois are home to multiple area codes, which is why it was surprising to discover there are in fact 12 states, including the behemoth that is Alaska, that have just one. And that's because said states have more cows than people, probably. Earlier on, when I said this, just to stick it to my year 10 maths teacher who told me that I'd never have such luxury, it did occur to me that my thousands of American viewers might have been thinking, what's year 10? Was Lawrence born in the 1st century? No. A year in this instance is the equivalent of what Americans would call a grade at school. And it just happens that this particular example is a year populated by 14 to 15-year-olds. And you might be thinking, ooh, Lawrence, that's not 10, that's grade 9. Well, actually, it's both, you see, from between the ages of 5 to 6, British children begin what is known as Year 1. But as I discovered while watching the documentary The Kindergarten Cop, Americans don't call that the first grade, they call it kindergarten. And so their numbering system is always one behind us. Oh, and speaking of years, that brings us on to this. I think at this point, most of us are probably aware that Britain and America can't agree on how to write the date. Obviously, in Britain, it's day first, month second, and year last. As evidenced by our famous Guy Fawkes slogan, remember, remember, the 5th
But you know,
of
fun
November.
facts, when I was in school, I used to mix it up. Like, sometimes
The month and the date.
yeah, sometimes the month will come first, then the date will come second.
And
But
even
the year is
Yeah.
always the last.
But the
Yeah.
year is always the last.
But even some what's it called?
Lecturer.
Some like not lecturers, some things you see, some dates you see online. I used to maybe sometimes I see 25th,
Yeah.
20 something. I used to like okay,
Which
25th
is-
can never be a month,
Oh, yeah.
so
Yeah.
the mix up is always there though.
Yeah, also lecturer slides I used to get when I was in school. I used to notice the difference between date
The
and
date,
month.
yeah,
within
the
different
arrangement.
lecturers. I don't know. It's not a certain thing year over year. You pick anyone, but when you see the day, you notice the day, and when you see the month, you notice the month.
Yeah.
The most annoying part of it all is imagine seeing a date like 6/6/12.
Yes, yes, you have to calculate. Like, is it 1912 or 2012 or 1812?
Wow. Nice point though.
November, whereas in America, of course, it's flipped, as evidenced by July the 4th. Americans usually say the 4th of
Yeah,
July.
the 4th of July.
I don't know why they do that, but for everything else, it's the month first and the day second. Why do they do that? Well, you'll just have to watch my YouTube short
Yeah,
all
well,
about it.
Yeah, the same point.
One
so
of my
easy.
longtime patrons, Jeff, asked me on this week's secret live stream. In the US, most people have memorized their phone numbers and social security numbers. What personal numbers are people expected to know in Britain? And phone numbers used to be one of those until we didn't need to anymore. But our equivalent of America's social security number is our national insurance number, or as it's known intimately to me, NIN. Nobody calls it that really. So, what are the major numerical differences between an SSN and a NIN? Well, for once, it isn't the number of characters, because an SSN has 9 and a NIN has 9. Try saying that after 7
Well, they
white
don't have
Russians. But the difference here is similar to zip codes versus postcodes. A NIN is comprised of 2 letters, followed by 6 numbers,
different.
and another
That's not
letter for good
insurance,
measure.
that's not
In the US,
identity.
it's all numbers.
Okay.
They just, America doesn't like letters. The first set of 3 digits is the area number, the second set of 2 digits is the group number, and then the final set of 4 digits is the serial number. We all care about that, obviously. The point is, I have both a NIN and an SSN, so I'm special.
I know, right?
Time. Is it real? Oh, that's a different video. Well, sometimes, to people like me who've lived on 3 different time zones, time can feel like it's ahead of its time. So I don't want to get bogged down in that, because there are other differences to talk about, namely how we tell the time. For instance, in Britain, if the time is 9:15...
If I should bring a British clock to Nigeria, is it going to still act British or is it going to act Nigeria?
You have to set it. No, it will act British. There are some people that have like 3 different country clocks in their offices or their house to know the time per time. If you're international and you have international clients and audience,
Someone should please send us a British
You can just, you can have it on your phone. I think it's the widget on the iPhone.
Yeah.
their house.
There is nothing like a British clock or a Nigerian clock.
So
They
it's
are
just
all
the way
clocks.
it's
It's just
set.
the way you set it. So even if you bring a British clock
Clock.
here and set it in the Nigerian time, you
to
get
still
in
follow
Nigerian.
that order.
Yeah, but I used to see this clock where you see Tokyo, you see some country like
It
there's
was
a
set.
way.
It's set to
It's
their
set to-
time there.
It's set to their time over there.
Over on your phone, like there's a widget I used to have that's like it has New York and Tokyo, like multiple people, but same time, but like on different times. So it's reset.
We might well say it's 9:15. In America, you often hear a 9:15, and similarly, Brits might refer to 9:30 as 9:30, whereas Americans might say 9:30. But the biggest difference between British and American digital clocks can be seen once we get to 1 o'clock in the afternoon. At that point in America, clocks will simply say 1 o'clock. But not in Britain, where it suddenly goes from 12:59 to 13 o'clock. And that's because British clocks are on military time. And when I lived in Britain, I never knew this as military time. In fact, it was Americans that alerted me to this term. I just thought of it as time, like the whole world does this. And now that I know that it is military time, I'm confused that America doesn't do it, because they have the biggest military in the world. And then I found that the US military does do it, but the general public doesn't. Either way, to this very day, I instinctively know that 7 p.m. in the evening, that last word was redundant, is equal to 19 o'clock. I should point out that British people don't go around saying
For
19.
real, like,
We need to know
see,
the both.
today, like I literally have to count
count
it.
my
I'm
finger
like,
from 13.
okay, like I'm not used to this particular kind of time.
That's
This
you
military
being
time.
dumb, bro.
If you say so, that makes you
It's
feel better,
okay,
yeah.
you know.
But I know it, but like I can't just say like 19
You don't
o'clock
know
is
it.
7. I have to
You
like
don't
count
know
my
it.
finger. Okay,
Do you know it? Yes, I do.
what is
20.
no? Should, there's a
What's
cheat.
23?
There's a cheat.
11.
There's a cheat on the like. There's a cheat
Yeah,
on the
she's
screen.
counting with her finger.
can literally-
She's
yeah.
counting with her finger.
She can literally count from the 19 on the screen and like get to. There's a cheat on the
I'm not
screen.
like you.
I like the video with her.
In conversation,
Okay,
we would
fast.
say 7, which makes it even weirder, I suppose, that our clocks don't do that. But anyway, a moment ago when I was talking about quarters, there was one thing that I forgot to mention, because it wasn't quite relevant yet, and that's how the two countries refer to a quarter, as in the fraction. Because I've noticed that Americans, like my wife for example, use the words quarter and 1/4 interchangeably. But having grown up in Britain, 1/4 always sounds weird to me, because then we would only say quarter in that context.
Yeah.
But I'm afraid that I'm going to have to interrupt myself there with a couple of caveats. The first of those is we don't have special words for other fractions, except for half. But then again, if you were to say 1/2, you could get confused with the time. And the other thing that might explain why Americans often plump for 1/4 is that a quarter is already part of the national dialogue, because that's the name of an American coin of the same name. Did you edit this?
0.
And I want to finish this video by talking about 3 numbers in particular, the first of which is 0. Is 0 a number? I'm no mathematician. And 0 is an interesting one to me because both countries have synonyms of the word 0 that the other
Yeah, that's
country
0.
doesn't have. In America, somebody might say, I got zilch, as in, I've got nothing. Whereas Britain's alternatives for this nice round number are often context dependent. Firstly, you've got nil, which you often find in sports, as in, Grimsby Town Football Club won the FA Cup final 6-0, whereas
Yeah,
American
me, I've
commentators
seen
are more
lots.
likely to say 6-0 or 6-zilch. And then there's the word naught, which from memory is what I called 0 when I was a little kid. But it's also used in the title of a game that Americans call tic-tac-toe, a game that we call
That's all.
noughts and crosses. And remember earlier when I said this? My area code was 01472. This use of O to denote 0 in phone numbers is not something you often hear in America, where the preferred option would be 01472. And then there were 7, or 2 actually, but 7 is one of them. Here in the United States, the number 7 is almost always written with 1 horizontal stroke and 1 diagonal stroke.
is that
But
from?
as many observant Americans have often pointed out to me, this is not always the case in Britain, where to that we like to add another.
We do both.
Yes,
Like,
whether it's
I'll say like our educational system is mix of UK and
And
America.
US.
In the sense that we used to like one stroke and sometimes when you feel like just like when some people don't used to like dot their eyes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
across,
Across our teeth very well. Like just when you feel like you're in the mood, like you have all the time, you just like
You see, in our effort to actually, copy the Western culture,
so,
we forgot that we are copying 2 notes.
yeah, the
Yeah.
time. There's a lot of bruh, it's so hard.
Horizontal stroke through the middle. And you might be thinking, why do you do that? And the answer is simple: to avoid confusion with the number 1. And to all of the Americans laughing at this idea, 7-Eleven agrees with me. I've just realised that's probably not an argument in my favour. And finally, how do you define 1 billion? Well, most people today who have a grasp of big numbers would tell you 1,000 million, but try telling that to British people from before the 70s. And that's because before 1974, British people, as well as a host of other countries, defined a billion as 1 million million, otherwise known as a long billion, or more commonly, a trillion. And you might be thinking, what did those British people call 1,000 million? And the answer is simple: 1,000 million. However, all of this ceased to be the case when we followed the American example, a decision that was taken by 69th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson, not to be confused with 67th UK Prime Minister Harold Wilson. That said, most European countries actually still operate under the long billion, which makes you wonder, is
Long
Luxembourg
billion.
the richest country just because it keeps adding on 3 zeros? I've no idea. Well, if I've learned anything today, it's that both countries have a very different set of numbers and occasionally letters. And for somebody who's already not very good at maths, this video has really made me miss my word videos. Anyway, thank you to my ponderers with whom I recently discussed this topic on our secret live streams. If you would like to become a ponderer of Lost in the Pond, you can do so today at patreon.com/lostinthepond or by clicking the join button below. Until the next video, goodbye.
Goodbye.
Okay, this is actually an interesting topic. Like, I've not actually thought about this before. Yeah, just seen it. I'm like, okay, so the people actually have different numbers, and it's so fascinating to me in the sense that over here we do both. Like some places,
Obviously.
yeah, some places we go to, we go
Confused nation.
actually a confused nation. No, when you're being colonized and you're trying to copy something so bad, like you might end up copying the person's name in the
we
example.
don't even know if we have originality. Like, but I don't think we have. I've never seen any manuscript or any
Yeah, everything
Yeah.
Yoruba language.
document or anything.
You don't have
Yoruba
that.
languages.
Because there's some area you go to, the house address is just 2 digits, which I've always been saying. There's some places you go to actually mention you see 3.
Yeah.
And
Well, you don't see 4.
No,
Four,
no,
except if it's British that own the street, maybe they bought the place or
Yeah.
something.
and the 7 parts, we used to like cross our 7 or we leave it like that. So I was just
And,
like,
and if it's 0, we call it 0 or
oh.
Yeah,
So,
we call
I think I have
so
something like
over here we do both in the sense that we can say oh, and you still get the memo, and you can say 0 and you still get the memo.
that. But in official meeting, we use 0.
0, official meeting, we
All
use
is
0.
one.
Yeah. So we're just the mix of everything together. We're like the Clash of the Titans. Thank you guys for watching with us. If you need your please consider liking, subscribing, and the link to my Buy Me Coffee will be down.
below.
Check that out. Support the channel by using it. And I hope to see you guys at my next video. Stay safe and bye for now.